like you're an NLP master. How can we use NLP and even explain to us what it even is for those who don't know what NLP really is? How can we use some tactics in our business to grow our business or even our own personal mindsets? Like, what are some of your favorites?
Yeah, so NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, right, is what it's for, and it's basically how to look at things, in your mind. It's really a bit of a blueprint, let's call it, so to speak, on how we are as humans. And then there's a lot of skills, tools that you learn to help someone shift somewhere, right, to upgrade their mindset, to move them forward in whatever element that is. And you've got it from a simple sense, from just coaching someone to be able to break through a mindset. And then there's a bunch of tools. So, from a coaching sense, what I would say is really very simple way is that when you're asking questions to someone, so to get someone a breakthrough, this is the difference between coaching and mentoring. Mentors tell you what to do. A coach asks you the right questions to get the answers out of you and ideally get you the breakthrough, right? So that's what NLP teaches you in that way, to be able to do that to people. Now, the questions you ask are important because if you think about a child, right? If they knocked over a glass and it broke on the ground, if you say, "Why did you do that?" they're going to be like, "I don't know."
Yeah.
If you ask a what or a how question, what made you do that? Oh, I was playing around and I just swung my arms. Or how did you do that? I hit it with my arm. They're going to be able to answer that question. So when you're doing a coaching element, you don't ask why questions. Why can be asked for other things, but you ask what and how questions, basically to dig deeper on what that is. Because a lot of the time, what people tell you the problem is only the surface level problem, right? We got to ask the deeper questions to find out what is the actual problem, because when we solve that, that will likely solve
Yeah.
many things in
Yeah.
them. So that's one area of NLP, of understanding how to question people, to be able to get to those things and shift them. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And obviously, jumping on like a triage call or a sales call, you're going to be asking a lot of those questions. Like you don't really want to get a yes or no answer. You want them to share more so you can dig deeper. So for those who are currently on the process of either just building relationships, but let's dive more into the sales side of things. On a sales call, what are like your favorite questions to ask? Like, yes, you've shared a few, but what are some like that really help you go deeper into finding out if you can really help these people?
Yeah, it's a great question. And sales is always an interesting topic. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. And I think there's an element of structure. There's also an element of intuition, let's call it, right, of what to do
Mhm.
in that, which comes over time, about what question to ask. So I think it's a combination. So initially in a sales call, you want to know like where they're at now, let's call it, right? Like, depending on what you're offering, like if I'm obviously helping business owners grow and scale their businesses, it's going to be more around like where they're at in their business currently, right? Things like
Yep.
that. If you want to help their mindset, their life, their health, whatever that is, right? So understanding where they're at now. And then you want to understand like where do they actually want to be in a certain period of time, right? So
Mhm.
whether that's 3 months, a year, whatever it is, like that you might work with them, and like what's the gap, right? So that's really important first. Now, one question, this is where why comes into it, is asking why is it important for you to do that, right? It's a really great question. And even technically digging deep on those whys, because then you start to get the real reason why they're doing what they're doing, right? Or why it's important for them to have this, your product or service or whatever like that. And ideally you link it back to that, right? So when you're proposing your product or service, then you're linking it back to their why. So you're tailoring it to them, right? So I think that's really important, when you're doing that. So it feels tailored, even if it's, obviously can cater to many things. And then, yeah, you obviously go through now. There needs to be a qualification element, right? And there's a reverse sales, let's call it, right here, where you need to confirm, like, how committed are they? Like, are you willing to put in the work, right? Or whatever that is to you, what's relevant, right? Are you willing to do X, Y, Z to get the result, right? And really get that commitment, and even get, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think it's really important question there. And then understanding like what other questions are important for you to be able to move them down the line. And then flipping the script, right? So at the end, because not everyone's a good client, right? I'm sure everyone out there has had, especially at the start of your business, where you take on a client, you're like, oh, this is a bit of a pain, but I want the money right now, or whatever like that. And you just do it. But when you grow a bit further, you can be a bit more picky with your clients
Yep.
and go, yeah, not exactly the right fit. And a great question, to ask at that point is saying like, I don't take everybody on here, right? I only work with, certain types of people that want to change or whatever the result is. What would make you a great client for me?
Oh, I like
That
that question.
very, very powerful question, because now they're selling themselves to
Flipping.
you, flipping this the script. And then you can
Yeah.
be like, okay, cool. Depending on what they answer, then you got to be like, okay, yeah, I think we can work together. Let's make it happen. And then, move through that process from there.
Ooh, I really like that. That's cool. And I guess for those who are a little bit nervous when it comes to sales calls, or when I first joined like my first mastermind years ago, and I started my first fitness business, um, online business, it was always stick to the script, get the reps in, practice. But for those who are kind of like still in that mindset, what are some NLP tactics we can use to increase our confidence when it comes to the sales side of things?
Yeah. So mindset comes down to a lot of things, right? In terms of what you do. So I think you need to have empowering beliefs around sales, or understanding, are there any limiting beliefs that you have around sales as well, right? So, for example, if you think, depending on what your experiences were with sales, you might think sales is sleazy because you've been around some sleazy car salesman or whatever that thing is, or, sales is hard, I don't like to sell because of these reasons. There might be some things coming up for you, right? So reframing what that is really important, right? So that could be, sales is fun. Sales is all about serving. Sales is a process, to put people through there. So I think that's the first step, right? Is doing that. Then also thinking about, okay, well, where do I want to be ideally in sales, right? Because we want to have the beliefs that support us in our ideal state, right? Later down the line. So let's say I am a master of sales and I am a great, ways to start beliefs. It's like, I'm a master of sales, I'm able to,
Yeah.
take people through a process and get them, for the right clients, to get them, to provide my products and services. So what are those empowering beliefs that always make you already an amazing salesperson? And tell themselves, every day, right? In terms of what you're doing there, so that even before a sales call, tell yourself what's going to happen, what you're going to do, like pump yourself up throughout the day. And all of a sudden, when you keep telling yourself these things every day, it's going to make you more confident.
Yeah.
Then there's the other side of things where you're not always going to get a yes, right? There's going to be a lot of no's that come up in sales, especially early on, but even throughout the journey, depending on what happens. So having the resilience that if it's a no, it's okay. Maybe it's you push it a little bit down the line, you reach out back later, and you just keep going. You don't let that affect you, right? So, and I think if you really want to build that, do some
Mm.
door-to-door sales or some phone sales, right? What cold sort of, door knocking or cold calling, because you get a lot of no's. I remember I did it for about 6 months and I spoke at like 50 doors in a day, right? And it's basically all no's. Nothing happened in that day. And you just got to be like, that's all right. Just keep going. The next one, the next one, the next one. So I think to be able to get more no's, it's like you're closer to yes, right? And that's the mindset. And then every time you
Yeah.
do it, like ideally look back and go, what did I do well? What did I not do well? And now with, AI, we could talk about a lot of AI later, is you can use this if you record ideally these sales calls, right? Like, whether it's on Zoom or other ways like
Mm.
that, you can get them transcribed and you can sort of, get them to rate you, or you can analyze yourself and go, okay, well, what did I do good here? What could I have done different? And if you have that constant mentality of, doing that, then you start to adjust what you do and you start to become better at making those decisions at that particular time in that sales process.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'll have to dive into the AI a bit later. But yeah, I remember when I was in the real estate industry, I was like door knocking up these super steep hills in the middle of summer, sweating. And yeah, I'd be door knocking like for 2 hours and get maybe like three appraisals, or, people to go in. But eventually it does pay off, but it's a bit of a slow burn. And I think if I didn't go through like the whole real estate business side of things, sales definitely wouldn't have been as it was definitely more easy to hear a no, because you hear no all the time, or hang up, or I'm not interested, and making 100 cold calls a day. So um yeah, it definitely sets you up. So when it comes to like, yes, your past and what got you into where you are now, like what was that trigger for you? Like what made you to who you are now?
Yeah, I'll touch on my story because I think a lot of people can resonate, whether it's not directly, but they've got their own versions of things happening,
Yeah.
right? So everyone's got pivotal times, right, in their life. And for me, I grew up in Adelaide, South Australia. My parents were high school teachers, and you know, trying to do well at school. And then in year 10, I started my entrepreneurial journey selling VCD movies. So when CD burners first came out, the younger people might be like, what are you talking about? We used to be able to burn these movies, Fast and Furious #1. That's
Yeah.
how long ago it was. And to be able to do this and then sell them. And I think strategically going, well, I don't know who else had a CD burner. So I'd get at least 5 or 10 orders of $10 each, and I'd burn them all at the same time. And I'd make, $50 to $100, right? And I'd do this multiple times. I was getting these. So that's where it started. And then I started not liking school anymore. I started partying, going out, even though I was only, 16, and doing a lot of stuff like that. And didn't like school towards the end, and I dropped out of year 12, which my parents didn't like, as you can imagine. And then I had to get a job. I got a job at a big environmental company, did a lot of
Wow.
cool stuff there, worked my way up.
Yeah.
And then, the thing is that it was tough, right? Because my dad said, you never be able to study, right? When I dropped out, and he had 3 degrees. One of my teachers said, you'll never be successful. Can you imagine that? Telling that to like a 17-year-old kid,
Mm.
right? When you're younger. So I've played a lot of sport. I think sports or, martial arts or musical instruments can be similar. We learn a lot of discipline, and we wanting to better yourself is really important. So when people tell me I can't do something, it's always like, watch me. I'm going to keep bettering myself and be better and be able to prove people wrong if I might not have the natural talent, that some people do out there.
Yeah.
So that helped me move forward. And then that company moved me to Sydney. Everyone was talking about degrees. I didn't have anything, and realized I could get it to UTS, one of the big universities here in Sydney, doing an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration, based on just over 8 years of experience working. So I was like, cool, let's do it. Hard for me to study, but I persisted. Then I left that company after 10 and a half years and started my first company, which is waste management consulting. So I took all of my knowledge in that industry, started putting it to the market. Now, I did the really risky thing here where I quit my job and started my business the next day. No cash flow, no nothing, right? Whereas most
Wow.
people say start to build an income on the side, right? But I burnt the boats, so to speak, and I just backed myself. And it was tough in those elements. And got an invite to a personal development, like in a 3-day event, business event, and upgraded my mindset, learned sales and all these other skills.
Mm.
And that was the catalyst 3 months in to do that. And then I realized investing in myself in these events was going to be the biggest thing for my success in business. And from there, I got Westfield as my first big client, helped them profit over
Wow.
$4 million per year, 20 million over 5 years. I work with Kmart and Target and Coles and Defense and Officeworks and all these big companies. And then I'd go to networking events and people would ask me questions about business. I'm like, why don't you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And they're like, that's really good. I need to write that down. Tell me that again. And this would happen multiple times. So I realized I had a very good strategic brain to come up with ideas from my MBA, from my business experience, from my coaches and mentors. So start business coaching mentoring. So almost 5 years ago now, I started also business coaching mentoring. I still have both businesses. And then, yeah, very, just before COVID. So very virtual initially, clients all over the world. I've helped over 30 industries and clients in over 10 countries, one-on-one and virtual events, and now doing in-person events as well here in Australia, and spoken around the world too. So, that's been an amazing process to be able to help people early on in their journey, 6-figure, 7-figure, even 8-figure businesses, grow and scale to create wealth and freedom. And then created my podcast as well, the Business Growth
Yeah.
Show, a lot of big names and over 200 episodes there. And then looking at other deals, how I can partner with people and get people investment into their business, acquire businesses, doing a lot of cool things like this. And I think, obviously that the pivotal time of dropping out of school was a big one for me, and then just backing myself, and then quitting my job and backing myself again. I think these were really pivotal times for me. And you got to make those decisions, right, in terms of what you're doing there along that journey. And we've all got our own journeys. So um, you know, we've never done things before a lot of the time, right? And if you're comfortable and you just want to stay comfortable, then you're not going to succeed. You got to put yourself in that uncomfort and allow yourself to stretch and grow. So that's
Yeah.
that's been some pivotal times for me in my
Yeah,
journey.
cool. And I know you said you went to a personal development event. There's obviously something that flipped the switch for you at that event. Do you remember what that thing was?
Yeah. So the two biggest things, number one was mindset. A lot of the first day was mindset, right? So it was understanding what were those limiting beliefs that were there. And with mindset, normally need somebody else to help you, whether it's at an event or like a one-on-one coach, because it's hard to ask yourself these questions, right? So when you start, to take down a process, it's going, wow, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking, business is hard, or whatever the thing is that I was believing at the time. It's a long time ago now, right? Over 7 years ago. So, with that, it was like, okay, well, now what do we want it to, what do we want to believe instead of that? Right? Flipping the script. What's the opposite of those things? And telling me that. So that was a big thing. And there was like a breakthrough experience, and had to now become more of a business owner. I think there was an identity shift, at that time as well, from just, being an operator, so to speak, being a technician, doing a job, to actually being a business owner. And then it was the sales techniques, which, we've already talked about, around understanding that there is a process to sales, and about how to reach out to people and how to meet people, how to take people through a process. And once I understood that properly and I implemented, and I think most people don't implement. That's the problem, right? We go to these events and most people don't write notes. I wrote 100 pages of notes that day,
Wow.
right? 100. And
Crazy.
I went in and I looked at it after, and I picked out what are the key things, and then I implemented, right? That's the key thing. So most people need a coach or mentor to be able to help them to do that, because most people aren't accountable. But if you're driven enough, you can do it yourself, right? So I think one thing was getting the mindset shifts, learning the skills and tactics, but it was actually implementation. With nothing happens, without implementation, that drive to really want to succeed.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And I love the analogy of, flipping the script, not just in the sales, but affirmations. Like, being aware of your limiting beliefs is like the first initial step, right? But then one thing that I've done, like for the last 10 years is, or my way of flipping the script is, how can I bring these limiting beliefs that I'm now aware of and turn it into an affirmation, and retrain or reprogram my brain to believe the opposite. So for example, like a while ago, if I wasn't doing sales calls, like I was delegating it and using offer docs and all sorts of stuff, and it was cool, but like I kind of missed it. And when I started doing sales calls again, I was like, oh, I feel like I feel like I'm dry. I need to like get my mojo back up again, right? Because it becomes second nature after a while. So what I did was I wrote an affirmation, and it was just changing my beliefs again. It was every single day I'd wake up and say, I love selling and I'm really good at it. I love selling and I'm really good at it. I love selling and I'm really good at it. And yep, within 4 weeks, I loved selling and I was really good at it. But it's the same with anything. Same with like when, the reason everything in my book is pretty much explains like how affirmations are so important. And I think let's go back to the AI side of things. I'm really interested to know how, like, I guess do you build a AI persona to help you kind of tweak your sales script or figure out what you could do better? Like, how can we use AI to make our sales even better?
Yeah, if we're talking from a sales perspective, when you think about AI, most people think ChatGPT. There's obviously a lot of other programs and things out there, but even from a ChatGPT perspective, it's all about how you prompt it, right? Because it starts at a blank canvas initially.
Yeah.
And the best way to use AI is that, number one, how you prime and prompt it, but also if you've got a lot of information, right, that is around a particular subject, and you can collate that, then you can pull information from it, right? So a really great example, like you're talking about, is sales calls. So if you've recorded huge amounts of sales calls, hundreds of sales calls, right, on Zoom or something like that, whatever it is, then you can transcribe those, you can then put them into something, and then you could pull things out of it. Like, for example, you could pull out, why are people saying yes? What are the objections that are coming up, right? That are from there, so that you can overcome those objections beforehand, right? Because ideally you handle objections before they come up so that they don't come up, right? Towards the end in a sales process. And then you could even ask it, how could you improve? Give it a rating, like, especially when you start to prompt it. And there's ways of creating your own, AI, in ChatGPT as well, if you've got the paid version, to be able to put this data in there, right? Where you're feeding it, and you've got that. And then it's just about understanding how to prompt it and going, okay, well, based on this situation, yeah, how do I pull this information out? Then you start to really get some really cut through messaging, cut through questions, cut through, like, who do I want to attract, right? In that sales moment. And then that can come into your wider sales and marketing strategy as well in your business too.
Oh, I love that. And I mean, I wasn't a big fan of ChatGPT and actually like training, and a persona pretty or creating one for ages, because I just felt like it took so much time to get it right. But I spent 90 days training my content AI persona, and oh my gosh, it's like talks exactly like me now. So you just got to be persistent and know what prompts to give. Um, but I love that you can actually like upload a whole video now. Like it's changed so much. Like I remember like it was a while ago now, you couldn't even upload an image or anything. So much easier to use. And with the marketing side of things, are there any like specific things that we can do when we're writing copy or in our marketing message that will help people kind of I don't know, kind of convert? So using an NLP tactic, is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. So, with copy, I think I'll do the combination of standard as well as AI, right? So AI, you can obviously get ideas for these things. So if you want to
Yeah.
put in like your avatar and things like that and going, hey, oh, this is what I do, act as is a great way to prompt it, right? Act as like an expert copywriter, if that's what we're talking about here. And, give me hooks for this, or give me, headlines, or give me, what I want to, cut through, right? In your marketing, depending on if it's content, if it's blogs, if it's, whatever you want to do, videos, right? Out there. So I think that's a great way. Now, depending how good you prompt it, that's really a foundation, right? So you've got to adjust it. It's not, don't just copy paste or just use it as it is, because you're going to sound like everybody else, but it gives you good ideas. So I think it's good to spark ideas. Then, or what are the top 10 problems in my industry, right? Like right now that's happening like that, so you can solve those problems, because as entrepreneurs, we're solving problems at heart, really, right?
Yeah.
So if you can find out what they are, that's what I would say. There's a good tool called Answer the Public. I don't know if you've heard of it,
Oh yes, I
but
love it.
yeah, so that way, you can search about, okay, this is my industry, whatever that is, and these are what people are searching, right, about it. And then you can write content based on that, which will then ideally get found, right? Or at least you're speaking exactly to what people have as their problem. So that's a great way to do it. So, from getting people and converting them across, the biggest tip that I would say is that, and you could prompt the ChatGPT or the AI as well as doing it yourself, is put it into a story.
Mm.
Because as humans, we're naturally wired to listen to stories. Over thousands of years, that's how knowledge has been transferred, right? Around the campfires, around stories. And when
Mm.
you go to events or you learn from someone, you don't remember everything they said, but you might be like, wow, I loved Athin's story. I loved Holly's story, right? I really connected to that. And you remember that part. So if you can create a story around how you're delivering your content, your copywriting, whatever that is in terms of your marketing, it's going to be more memorable and have more cut through, and ideally then get people more trusting and inviting and wanting to do something with you at that point, at least building trust over time. So that would be, my biggest tip. And then, obviously putting it out there to different mediums, right? You've got, obviously social media content, you can create blogs, different types of videos. There's a lot of different platforms that do different things on marketing. And I guess one other tip that I would say on marketing, just general marketing, is that you've got to be able to capture the lead. There's three key phases, right? So you've got capture, you've got nurture, and then convert in marketing. The first stage is the capture phase. How are you capturing their details? Because just putting content out there doesn't mean anything if you can't capture their details and then be able to put them through a process where you're warming them up, they're trusting you more and everything, to then eventually ideally wanting to buy or refer, right, to you there. So, are you offering something for free? Basically, this could be, that people call it a lead magnet. It could be like an ebook. It could be a checklist. It could be a video training, something that you're offering for free, or people are like, yeah, that's valuable. I'd love to get that for free. You got their content. Now you can start to warm them up and ideally put them through a nurture process, from there, the second phase, where you're nurturing them over time. Could be through emails, through SMS, through your social media content, etc. Podcast, whatever that is. And then, then you get to a point where they trust you enough, and then you can, have a sales
Yeah.
call, get them to an event, whatever that is as well, where you get to convert them, over time too. So I think that's where everyone needs to think about, is how you capturing that lead initially, because just putting stuff out there is not going to, grow your business.
Yeah, I think the nurture is where people fall off the wagon because nurturing takes a lot of energy and consistency. And I think, like, for example, a money-making activity is follow-up, right? And making sure your CRM is updated. But people don't do that because I feel like they have resistance towards it. Um, with any kind of resistance towards money-making activities, how can people release that resistance?
Yeah, it's a great question. And probably initially comes down to mindset, right? So what you're resisting will persist. So if it's like, what don't I like? I don't like messaging people on social media, right? I don't like, what is it that you don't like? What are you resisting? And then doing the opposite of that's number one. The biggest thing is a great book. There's a great book called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. I don't know
Oh
if you've
yeah,
heard of
I
it.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it talks about doing the biggest thing at the start of your day, right? So I always talk about revenue generating activities. That's the thing that's going to grow the business. And as the business owner, we need to be doing revenue generating activities. And the best time to do that is at the start of the day. Because if you leave them towards the end of the day, things can pop up and you might not get them done. But that's
yeah,
going to be the thing that actually grows the business. So you need to understand first your client journey. Like, I think a lot of people, why they don't do it is they don't really understand the journey of their clients, of how they get a client. They're winging it a little bit in a way, right? It's like, oh yeah, I've gotten a few clients, I've posted some things, I've chatted to some people, whatever. It's like, well, what is the process, the 10, 20 steps that I get to someone? Then you could be like, okay, is there a system like a CRM that I can do a lot of these steps in? Or sometimes it's outside the system, which is okay, combination. And then going, how do I take these people through that process? And what are the key things that I need to be doing? And a lot of the time, these days, warming people up is conversations, right? Like to be able to have that. So whether that's, chatting to people on social media, other ways of obviously, delivering content as well. But like, what's the step? So if you put out a really great piece of content out there and people are liking and commenting and really into it, are you messaging that person and just say, hey, thanks, are you doing this? And having a chat with them, right? Most people don't want to sit there and doing the chat. But if you spend half an hour to an hour every day, let's say an hour, right? In the first half of your day, towards the start of your day, on these revenue generating activities, the nurture stage, like you're talking about, right? Like the messaging people back and forth, or whatever that is that's going to be happening there, booking, eventually seeing if there's a problem, right? So understanding, did they have a problem that you can solve, and then getting them ideally on a call or whatever your sales process is
yeah,
to convert them over
definitely.
time, then that's going to be the difference, right? Doing it at the start of the day, and don't doing 3 hours of emails unless they're like sending contracts or something like that. That's
Yeah,
revenue generating, right? Is doing that. So that would be my biggest tips. Is just, and it's building discipline. I think most people don't have the discipline to do it. So are
mm,
you building enough discipline and doing the things that you don't like doing even when it's hard? And once you do that enough and you build the habit, and ideally, maybe you can reward yourself when you do it, or you take things away if you don't do it there. Then you start to build a habit beyond it, and then it becomes natural. Put it in your calendar, whatever that is. Then you likely, with that consistency, start to really
yeah,
create big impact.
yeah. That's it, and I agree with that. It's like, I started going to a boxing gym, so when I was doing my bodybuilding comp, I got so bored of the stairmaster, so I started to do boxing for my cardio, and they made us do so many burpees and push-ups. I couldn't believe it. I think every single session I would do at least 100 burpees and maybe push-ups. Like, it was just, and I was going like quite a few times a week. At the start, I hated burpees. By the day 30, I actually enjoyed burpees, believe it or not. And it's a bit like the running process, right? When you've learned to run or haven't ran in a long time, you're not run fit and it's uncomfortable, right? You've got to push yourself to do it. And then eventually you get into a flow, you get a runner's high, and you learn to enjoy it. I think it's the same with anything. You actually can train yourself to learn to like something initially when you don't think, you know, you are going to in the future. But I really like eating the frog first. I'm a morning person, so I like to do that too. Are there any CRMs that you really highly recommend? I get asked this question all the time, and I've tried so many, but I honestly always go back to Google Sheets. I love Google Sheets. It's just for me, I've got a whole system with my VA. So, but do you recommend any really good CRMs?
Yeah, and do what works for you, right? In the end, and Google Sheets can work because a CRM cannot necessarily do everything, right? That you
Yeah,
want to be doing. So I think there's value in having things in Google Sheets or spreadsheets outside of systems as well. For CRMs, so these days, what's happening is they're switching more to all-in-one systems that are out there,
Yeah.
right? That do a lot more things. So there's systems like Go High Level you might have heard of, or there's systems called like Next Level that I use, nexlvl.ai, which has a lot of AI built into it as well. These are like all-in-one systems that allow you to do multiple things, that they're all connected.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other ones out there. However, to get different systems to talk to each other can cost more. You've got to connect them and things can break. So that would be my recommendation for people with a CRM. And, there's a lot of people that, build on top of these as agency models and things like that.
Mm.
And then it's really understanding, because, they have a database, they have all the funnels in there, the websites, the landing pages, they have the automation, so you can send the emails and SMS messages automatically. They have calendar links, so you don't need Calendly anymore. They have,
Yeah.
all these other things. Now there's AI agents and things that are being built into them to automatically do tasks, to chat to people without you having to chat to them, all that type of stuff. So it starts to become really powerful now in these systems to do that. Now, you may not be able to get, especially I think in your marketing and sales numbers, not all of them have those numbers within the system. And this is where you can use Google Sheets or Excel to measure your lead process and everything outside of that. And then as they then get into your CRM to then help continue that marketing and sales
Yeah.
process from there. So I think it's a good to have a combination in it as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think having a third party CRM that does a lot more than, because I used to, I did try out a few, but with my VA, because she does have the time to look at what's working, what's not working, and updating it like every single day. It's a full-time job within itself. That works for me, but I think if someone is starting off, I think even Go High Level or something that, you just got to shop around and see what works for you. It
Yeah.
might be a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I'll just say be wary, right? Because I'm very big on systems. I was fortunate that my parents took me to learn computers at 6 years old, right? From when Windows was 3.1. And I've always been very good at systems. So you've always got to think about the future, right? So as a business owner or being in business, you've always got to think strategically, many moves ahead. And this is one of my things that I teach a lot of my clients, because you don't want to get a system and it's limited, and then you've spent all this time and money into it, and then you're like, crap, now when I want to scale the business or something, it doesn't allow me to do that. So a lot of people get like MailChimp, right? And then they're like, oh, it's free, I can do it and everything like that. But then it has less functionality. It doesn't allow you to scale later. So you're better off spending a little bit more on some of these other CRM systems out there that allow you to scale more. So that's the mindset and the thinking that you need behind whatever system that you're doing in. Is this going to allow me to scale, and how does this work within everything else in my ecosystem? So I don't always like to say just get this, but you ask the question, but it's always like looking at it strategically about what you're doing overall, what's your business processes, and then what do we plug in to make that happen as well. So I just wanted to make that clear for people too.
Yeah, well said. I really like that. And I have one last question for you before we finish up, and it's, what is your definition of happiness?
My definition of happiness. It's an interesting question. So to me, happiness is a choice, right? So, because anything external from us shouldn't make us happy or unhappy. Realistically, happiness is an internal job to me. So we can choose to be happy, because no matter what challenges, issues are happening in our life or our business, they can be a blessing as well, right? If you look at them. So they could be like, oh, okay, this is not working. Now, what else can I do? I need to change. I need to pivot. So that's the way I look at things. So I'm never unhappy. To me, I'm like always happy. I'm always choose to be happy. And then it's just about navigating life. And to me, it's all about like health, wealth, and freedom, right? In terms of how I live life. Like I've got to be healthy, there, and eating well most of the time. Like we can have some little, cheat meals, things like that. In the end, that moving the body, eating decently well most of the time, being able to build wealth then from there to be able to create your own economy, grow your wealth, grow your business, whatever that looks like, to have freedom, right? To be able to do what you want to do, sort of when you want to do it. And then when you have those elements, then, I'm happy basically in that area there. And no matter what comes up, nothing really gets me unhappy. It's just like how do I change? How do I pivot? What do I need to do differently from there? And because realizing if anybody externally from you tells you that you can't do something, it's actually a reflection of themselves that they can't do it, right? So just be aware of that. So nobody should be able to affect you in that way. So just be true to yourself, and then you'll be able to do anything really in your life.
Yeah, the mirror. I really like that you bring that up. Because it's really true. I think a lot of the times as well we put our unhappiness on others and blame others when really it's a mirror, right? We've got to look internally, and that's why I say, happiness is an inside job. Um, but let's just say those elements were all stripped away. Your health, your freedom, your wealth. Then what's happiness to you?
What's happiness to me? I would just say is being a great person, right? Like I've got Greek background myself, and there's a word in Greek called philotimo, and it's not directly translated. It's a very deep answer. Simple translated, people say love thy friend or honor thy friend, right? But it's much deeper than that. So are you an honorable person with integrity in everything that you do, on how you're being, right? How you're showing up to people. What is your energy that you put out there to people to make that people enjoy being around you, and that you're doing things for the betterment, not about money gain or other things like that, right? If you're, leaving people in a better position, than when they were beforehand, and they enjoy your company, to me, that's the way that I am generally. So everyone, loves to be around me because I emanate that energy, and I'm always, improving, that element of me. So that's what I would say, is that if you're a good person, in the end, people will gravitate towards you, show your authenticity, and then you'll naturally attract the right people to you that you want, and ideally disattract, remove the people that are not a fit for you in whatever element of your life or business that is.
That's it. Beautifully said. Well done. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us? Anything you want to add or share with the audience before we finish up?
Yeah, I'll just say that whatever you're doing, a lot of the time, to get to that next level in your business, in your life, you need an identity shift. So wherever you're at now, maybe you're a business owner, but then the next level might be an investor, right? Is like going, okay, how do I look at my business as an investor in my business, and how do I do multiple businesses and other things like that? So I'm not trading time for money, and I'm able to look at things on a bigger perspective to create that freedom. It might be that, if I talk a life perspective, maybe you're a mum and you want to get back into doing what you're doing, right? Because you haven't been doing it for a while, whatever that looks like for you. So understand, where is the identity that I want to be in at some point in the future, but you have to believe that you're that identity now to be able to attract that future towards you. And then what are the beliefs that support that identity that you need to tell yourself every day, those affirmations? So then you are embodying that new identity already. And all of a sudden you can compress time without going too deep into quantum physics, but you can compress time into that element there with putting out this new frequency, this new energy that you're pointing out, and then you will attract people much quicker, and you will get there much quicker. And then all of a sudden, when you have that vision and whatever else that you're wanting to create in your life, you have the right identity, you're putting out the right signals, all of a sudden you will attract all of those, and you can create anything that you want, in your life or business. I went to just quickly, I had my wife, right? I went to a guided meditation event. Long story short, I know we don't have much time, is that I went through a guided meditation and asked for my perfect woman after being single for 10 years before that. And I manifested it instantly at that event, right? By being very specific at what I wanted. So specificity is really important. And just because you say something now, it could take time. It could take months, it could take years sometimes, or it could be relatively instant. But until you're really clear on it and you're putting that out there, because everything's connected in this world from a quantum perspective, then that way, the clearer you are, the closer and the quicker you can attract it as well. So that's my little tips generally about creating things in life. And yeah, it's really, really powerful when you understand this and you put it into practice.
Get clear. I love that. And there's two lists that I think are really powerful to make. The first one is a want list, and creating everything you actually want in your life, in your business, in yourself, like with no expectation and with no why. I think a lot of the time we feel like we have to have a why attached to absolutely everything. Like me growing up, like I feel like there had to be a reason why. But you're allowed to want something without there being a long reason why attached to your values and your purpose and this and that. You're allowed to just want. So give yourself the freedom to write your want list with just removing anything aside of what you think you should do, have to do, or could do. Just what do you want to do? And then the other list is the best version of you. Like, I remember one of my clients, he does a lot of NLP as well, but he took me through a meditation, and it was pretty much like the best version of you meditation. And it was just so powerful, and it was so clear. So creating a list of like, what does the best version of you look like, the next level of you, and just looking at those characteristics and attributes and traits, and are you living them now? I think just it's a great awareness exercise. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. Thank you for today. It's been actually really insightful, and like, just, yeah, I think there's some beautiful things that have been said. Where can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, thanks, Holly. It's been a pleasure being on your show and be able to share a lot of value to your audience. People to find me. So you can find me on my website, athincassiotis.com. That's ATHINCASSIOTIS.com. There's only one of me. There I've got everything, and I've got an ebook, my 9 keys to business growth mastery, you can get for free. And I won an ebook competition of over 400 people. So you can model it as well as get some great value from that for free and see everything that I do. And I'm on all the social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Insta, YouTube, and all of that is Athin Cassiotis. It's easy when I've got a unique name. There's only one of me to find. So yeah, find me in all of them. Love to, add some value to you, and hopefully hear back on how it's helped you to grow your business in your life as well. And yeah, thanks, Holly. It's been a pleasure being on your show.